I know it's a little weird because they look very pastel right now, but when you get that water into it, you're going to see how they change the colors into the vibrant colors. So I'm painting on, generally I paint on a piece of fondant because I just don't need a bunch of cookies laying around, and the fondant is just quick and easy for me to roll out. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You should have a set of brushes. You should have a very fine tip brush and a medium fluffy brush. And that's pretty much all you need. The bowl of water, some paper towels. Alright, let's get started. So where we're going to start on this guy is we're going to jump right in and start painting the body. And I know it looks kind of, you know, this shape right here, but we're going to build up to this. So the color we're going to start with is our ocean color. And just go in, when you're painting, I never dump water right into the paint. You don't want to do that because it's going to get too watery on you. So what I do is I just dip my brush into my water and then bring it over here and start mixing a little bit up. And you can see I have, this is a lot of paint in here. I'm not going to use all of this. So what you don't use, you know, obviously just save or use on another cookie or cake or whatever it is that you like painting on. So the consistency you want to mix this is like a smooth acrylic consistency. So it's going to be a little bit thick, but you still want to be able to paint with it pretty smoothly, okay? Now I always tell my students, when you're mixing this paint up like this, it's going to get all gooped up on your paintbrush, okay? So after you're done mixing it, and if you see me pulling powder into my paint like this, make sure you give your paint a good mix always. You want that dissolved in there. You want all those color crystals activated. So give it a good mix, and then when you're done mixing, push the paint out of your paintbrush and clean your brush off. It's important to always work with a clean brush, okay? If you don't have a clean brush, you're not going to get nice smooth lines. So mix your paint, clean your brush off, and then go back in and just take a little bit of paint out of there. Now where we're going to start on this is right about in the middle, and we're not going to start with this shape right away. We're going to make a circle, and then we're going to build on that circle, and you're going to see how it makes it a lot easier for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to start about, find the middle of your canvas, and then I want you to go up about an inch, maybe a little bit higher, and make a little dot just like that. Okay, as we're painting along, when we start getting into more detailed sections, I'm going to paint, and then I'm going to wait, and I'm going to ask you if you're finished. If I'm getting too far ahead, just tell me to wait or hold. I don't want to get too far ahead. Okay, now picking up more of that ocean, I want you to also mark, find the center of your canvas here, so it's about there, and then I want you to mark somewhere in the middle. Okay, we're going to be doing a circle around it. I'm just trying to map this out for you real quick. Do you do any painting at all on your own? Okay, and then once you have that marked, all we're going to do is we're going to start forming a little circle right here. And it doesn't have to be round because we're going to paint off into, we're going to pull it down into different directions. So coming down to about that bottom marker that we had, all I want you to do is start painting a little round circle like this. If you're painting and you can't paint a line without it skipping right away, then you might want to add a little bit more water to your paint. Okay, and then once you have your circle on, what I want you to do is come down around like this, and right about in the center right here, just bring it down and then make a little curve like this. That's going to be the bottom of that wing that peeks out. Okay. So you kind of have like a balloon, sort of a balloon shape almost, and then this little, like a Q on the bottom, little curly Q. Okay, and then I want you to come up to the top and sort of, okay, so this would be your center, and then sort of off to the left right here. Excuse me. That would be your starting point. All I want you to do is make a little swoop, just like a little curve out like this, and then back in, and what you're going to do is you're going to connect it to that bottom piece like this. And then after that, I want you to pick up your a little bit bigger brush, a little medium-sized brush, and then using that same paint, make sure you have enough mixed in there. And I always tell my students, if yours doesn't look exactly like mine, it doesn't matter. We're not trying to make yours look like mine. I am just here to guide you through your own. The quote I always use that I made up was, unless you're painting or drawing realism, there are no rules in art, therefore you cannot make mistakes. Okay, so I've got a little bit more on my palette, and you want it like a medium thick consistency with my medium brush, and then just go in and fill this area in. You can see Sugarprism works just like real It works just like real acrylic paint. It's not actual acrylic, it just works like acrylic. It's also a nice vanilla flavor, so you're not going to get that strange bitter dye flavor. We're going to go in and we're going to add more colors on top of this. But for now, we're just filling it in. And all of this is going to look a little strange until we start getting our details in, but I like to take it step by step so it's a little bit easier. And don't worry about this green line. This is going to be filled in with our lilac, and you're going to see another nice difference about Sugarprism is because it's an opaque paint. You can overlap colors without them bleeding through, even light over dark colors. Okay, now you can see how smooth it is. You have time to work with it. You can see it's still wet here, so if we wanted to go and blend colors on the canvas, we could do that. The side is already drying up, so we're okay to go and start painting our lilac over on this side. Now going back in with our fine tip brush, and when you're doing detail work, I always tell students to take a look at your brush, and you'll notice that it tapers down. It starts kind of wide here and then it tapers down. When you're doing fine detail work, always work from those very last 1 or 2 bristles on the end of your brush. So going in, we're going to pick up some of that lilac. Give it a good mix around. We're going to want a good amount on there. The amount of paint that you see on my palette, that's about 1 gram. And you're going to see it doesn't, how very little bit of paint. When you got your packet, you're probably thinking, gosh, that's a small amount, but you're going to see that it takes very, very little to do any job. So this is maybe 1 gram that I'm working with right here, and I'm just using a fraction of that 1 gram. And then in the large packs of Sugarprism paint, you get 40 grams of paint in each packet. So you really do get a lot of product for your money. So you can also airbrush with Sugarprism. Okay, and then let's come down here. What we're going to do is this whole area is going to be filled in. So I'm going to bring this out just a little bit wider right here. It's like a little hump on top. I need more water in my paint. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring this down into a curve, and I'm going to connect it to the bottom of our little green little curly Q down there, just like that. So just a little curve out. Don't have to think about it too much. And then connect it down like that. And then once you got that on, all I want you to do is just go in and fill this area in. And you want it a little bit on the thicker side, but still a nice smooth consistency. You can see it goes right up over the top of that ocean color. And as you paint along, you're going to see a little bit of texture in your paint, kind of like raised up off your canvas a little bit. Don't worry about that, because when it dries, it's going to dry nice and flat and smooth. And then with the very tip of your brush, we're going to add just a tiny little bit more. Actually, we'll worry about the other little details after we have our tree branch on there. Let's move on to, we're going to put our branch in there while this top part is drying a little bit more, and then we'll put our little eyeballs in there. So for the branch, we're going to start with the brown, the teddy bear brown. So going into your teddy bear brown and then mixing that up. Again, just a nice medium smooth consistency. And then again, I push the paint out of the brush, clean it off. You don't want anything gooped up on there. And then the branch is very simple. It's very basic. I used the same design on some pie art that we did. We did a really fun pie sculpting and painting class with the same design on it. That was really cute. Okay, so starting over on this side, if you look at where the bottom of the wing is, you want to come up a little bit higher and over here. Okay, and then all you're going to do is with the very tip of your brush, just all I did was made a little line over. It can be straight, it can be a little curved. It's a tree branch, so it's not perfect. Like that. And then we're going to, now you have to visually picture if this branch is going through that wing, it's going to come out about there. And then what I did was I extended it, but I just curved it up like this. Just make a little curve up. If it's a little higher than mine, it doesn't matter. If it's a little bit lower than mine, it doesn't matter. Okay. And then we're going to come down here. And all I want you to do is just add a little curve down there, because you can see our branch, but our branch is going off of our canvas over here. So just make a little curve. And then after you have that curve, I want you to come over here on this side, and we're just going to make a little, kind of a little V here. So starting about here, just a little distance from our wing, just start here, and then as you get closer to that tip, you get closer and closer and closer like this. And then from there, all you do is extend this one down like that. I'm gonna bring mine up just a little higher. Okay, and then once you have that, all you're going to do is just go in and fill it in. And if you're painting on a cookie or a pie or something that has an edge like mine, make sure you go down and paint the edges too, because it just looks a lot nicer. It doesn't look like your painting just sort of stops off at the Grand Canyon and jumps off somewhere. Okay. Are you doing okay so far? Does everything sort of make sense? Pretty easy so far? Now we're going to do more detailing in that branch, but let's let it dry just a little bit first. We're going to go into our dandelion yellow. And then what I want you to do is, the eyes on this owl, on this design, are not super bright yellow. So what I want you to do, and I want you to just barely pick up any, and if you want to, instead of mixing brown into what you have on the well, take some of that yellow and put it over here off to the side, because we're going to mix another color into that. So instead of changing all this color that you have in your well, in case you want to use that yellow later for something else, just move some of your yellow over here, and then just barely dip your brush into some of that brown. So you just take a very tiny little pinch of brown, and adding it to that yellow. So you can see the colors mixed together really well, just like real acrylic. And we're making a more muted shade of yellow because this is an owl and it's a nighttime scene, so we don't really want them super bright yellow. And the consistency you want is more on the thicker acrylic side. Okay, push that color off, clean your brush off. And then go back in and pick some up. And then for the eyes, we're just going to make 2 little round circles. And they come out pretty far, but not quite as far as the body does. Okay. If you end up making them a little bit bigger, that's okay, it doesn't matter, but these ones are not quite as far out as the body. So, going up here, all I want you to do is, okay, so visually picture where that body would be and then come in just a little bit and do the same thing. Like picture where the edge of that body is and then come in a little bit there. And then mark your center. So once you have your little markers, 1, 2, 3, let's just go in and paint some little circles. And I want your little circles to touch, almost overlapping. And bring them all the way down to that body, okay? We're going to outline all of this in black anyway. So all we're doing is painting 2 circles. Just going to look like 2 yellow blobs for now until we get everything else in there. And just go ahead and fill them in. Like I said, you want to overlap them just a little bit. We're going to have his crown in the center of that anyway, so. I think I'm comparing it to his body. I think I'm going to make mine a little bit bigger. You can see when I compare it to this one. Yeah, I think I'm going to make them just a little bit bigger than that. And then let me know when you're caught up. Just type ready. No, that's okay. Don't worry. If they're big, it's an owl and it's an abstract owl. Remember I said, unless you're painting realism, there are no rules in art. So you cannot make mistakes. And another thing that you can do is, I'm going to show you a fun thing that you can do with Sugarprism that you can't do with other products. Another thing that you can do with Sugarprism that you can't do with other products is if you take a clean brush, so I have a medium-sized brush, dip it into your water and then wipe it off on your paper towel a little bit. So if you come in with a clean, damp brush, you can literally come in and you can take off color. If you think it's too big, you can take off color, but we're not going to worry about that because we're going to do his crown. So when you do his crown and we paint the black around it, you can always paint over the top of it to make them a little bit smaller if you want to. So for the moon, I want you to pick up your very fine brush and then pick up just a little bit of your ocean color. And then where it starts, where the ocean or the moon starts, is right about here above the eye. Is where I have it. And if it isn't perfectly round, that's totally fine. You can see mine actually isn't round, so don't worry about the roundness so much. So just starting from about there and just very lightly from the tip of your brush, just make a curve out like that. And we're going to paint all this area in with black. So don't worry about that too much. And then down here, my branch comes up a little bit higher on this one than it does here. See? So starting from about the middle of the belly, we're going to start first curving down and then skipping that branch and then off of our canvas like that. Okay. So after you have your moon lines in there, going into the darker green, and that's our Scotland green, which happens to be one of my favorite colors on this palette. Going in and mixing that up to a nice smooth acrylic consistency. We were supposed to have more people on painting with us, but I know life happens, so we have a nice small class. Okay, now for the crown or the crest or his headpiece, whatever you want to call it, just going in and picking up a little bit of that paint. You definitely want to work from the very, very tip of your brush. All you're going to do is you're going to start from about right here, about 2/3 of the way down, and then all I want you to do is I want you to come up and I want you to follow the curve of your eye. And this is where you can start making your eye smaller because you're using up some of that space. You're overlapping that eye right there. So all you want to do is come up and make a little curve and then curve up like this. Okay, or you could start it from here and then bring it down in like that. And then come over here. If it's in a little bit further or out a little bit further than mine is, it doesn't matter. He's sort of got like a wild crown going on top like that. And I'm going to bring mine out just a little bit farther here. Okay, and then we're just going to make what we painted on just a little bit thicker, and we're going to connect it at the top. So all you want to do is just bring this side and then kind of curve it down and then back up like that. So we're just making it thicker and filling that area in. See how Sugarprism just overlaps those colors, no problem. It doesn't bleed up through. And then make sure you're using, again, the very tip of your brush, very fine brush. Just go and add some tiny little wispy lines like this, like those feathers are kind of wild and kind of sticking out. They don't all have to be the same height, but make sure you sort of follow the same direction as the crown, the same shape. Same thing on this side, just add a couple little wild little feathers that are sticking up. And then the same thing on top here. You don't have to think about it too much, just go in and add a few on top like that. let me know when you're caught up to that point. It looks very dark right now, but we're going to come in and we're going to add some highlights and low lights here and there in different spots. So we're going to go into the black, mix that black up. Again, you want it a smooth acrylic consistency. Push that paint out. Now for these areas, for the fine areas that you want to get into, you definitely want to use your smaller brush and around. Make sure you don't go, oops, see what I did. Make sure you don't go into the moon with the black. So don't worry about these areas, but with your fine brush you want to get in between all these areas with black. Okay, and then this area up here you might want to use your medium brush just for filling in faster. then don't forget, with your fine brush, working from the very tip, you're also going to want to outline these eyes all the way around. And take your time. We're going to add a little beacon right there, so don't have to worry about that spot too much. Alright, now what I noticed on mine, whoops, compared to the original, was something on the wing. And you can add to this if you want. Let me show you the difference in this one and the original one. On this one, the wing kind of comes down, and that's totally fine. And then on this one, we have more of a roundness on top, so I'm going to add a little bit more lilac onto mine because it gives it that really big, heavy, bold owl wing there. So I'm going to, like I said, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I think it's going to look a little bit better. I'm going to come in and I'm going to make sure that lilac is very thick, because we're going up over the top of black. I just got water on my fondant, which is very not good, because the water will eat right into that fondant. Okay. So I'm just going to put a little bit of lilac right here to the top and round that wing off. See how it goes right up over the black? You cannot get that from other products. Just like that. Just bringing it up a little higher to make it a little bit more bold. And then maybe out just a little bit this way too. Just like that. Let's add some little eyeballs. Now, definitely using your fine brush. Go in, I'm going to show you a really easy way to make a more round shape, more circular shape. Is go in and mix up a good amount of that black, kind of thick. And then take your paintbrush and I want you to go in and pick up as much of that paint as you can without it falling off your brush. And then all you're going to do is you're going to take that little ball of paint and you're going to tip your paintbrush vertical, make sure it's nice and thick, that's not falling off your brush. And then I just want you to go down and touch that spot. And then take your brush and just start pulling it out in a little circular motion. Now the spot that you want your dot, that eye, or the iris, is a little bit further in. You're not completely touching the crown, and I might make my crown just a little bit wider, I don't know, but you want it a little bit closer to the side than this side. Owls look slightly cross-eyed, but not, if that makes any sense. So their pupils come in a little bit closer to the center. Okay, so just taking that original dot you put on there and just start pulling it out. And you should end up with something fairly round. Doing the same thing on this side, picking up a nice blob, tipping your brush up and setting it down, and then just working it around in a circle. And then try to get them fairly the same size. And then let me know when your eyeballs are done. Now he's starting to look like a little owl. Okay, let's move on and start. Before we put the little highlight or the little reflections in our eyeballs, we're going to let that black dry up a little bit. So let's first start adding some dimension to our moon. Make sure all of that color is out of your brush. And let's start with a layer of white just to get a better blending effect for that ocean. So go into your white, and I want you to mix it up, not watery like watercolor, but more on the thin side, and definitely use a medium size brush for this. So all we're going to do is add what is called like a wash layer. So taking that thin white, all I want you to do is just go in and add a very quick layer of that white. Add a little bit there. Okay, it doesn't seem like you're adding a whole lot of color, but you are adding a little bit, and you're preparing it to get it blending. I mean, the fondant was white, so it's not totally necessary, but it does add a little bit of dimension if you want to use that white. And then let's add a little bit more of a moon effect. I want you to come in and pick up just barely, I mean just barely any little yellow on your brush. And then following the same shape as the moon, all I want you to do with that thicker brush is just go in and just add a few swipes of that yellow. Remember, following the same direction. And it doesn't have to go all the way to the center. And this will help add a little bit more of a two-dimensional look also. It's just very light coat of Now pick up your fine brush. Remember, working right from the very tip. Picking up some of that ocean. Again, a thinner acrylic consistency, so you just want a little bit on your brush. And then what you're going to do is you're going to start closer to the edges here and here. And you're just going to start doing a very light, right from that last hair or two on your brush, very lightly feathering those lines. And they're going to be longer and more solid the closer they are to your edges. And then they get lighter and lighter. So make sure you're following the shape of the moon. Okay. So again, heavier towards your edges. And then just light. Some of them don't have to start from the edges, some of them start in different spots. And then as you get kind of to the middle, you can add just a few little short lines, like one or two, just sort of like sneaking in there a little bit like that. Laveda, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them out there. You can see it's a very smooth paint, just like acrylic. You can also airbrush with Sugarprism paint. It takes very, very little to do a job. The paint that you get in a kit, it doesn't seem like a lot of paint when you get it, but when you start using it, you're going to realize how little bit it takes to do a job. So if you get online and look at the packages, you get 40 grams in each package, and that's a lot. Plus you get more than one product in one. I'm asking for my birthday. You got it, Sugarprism. All right, that's a great Christmas and birthday present, anniversary and stuff like that. And then the same thing that we did with the moon, we're going to do with the eyes. Except we're going to add the detailing with a little bit of brown. So again, the consistency you want is a little bit thinner acrylic. You don't really want it sticking and gooping up to your brush. You just want very, very little bit, and you're working again from that very tip of your brush. Are you caught up to this point, Leslie? Okay. So basically we're going to do the same thing with the eyes as we did with the moon, but we're using brown. And see how I've got more towards the center here? You're just sort of pulling it out. I have a little bit of red in there, but we're not worrying about the red right now. So we're just pulling the brown the same as we did the moon, and I barely have any on the outside edges. It's more towards the middle. Okay, very lightly, just kind of a feathering, just very light feathering. Very, very little on your brush. Okay, so I'm pulling from the center out. And make sure you follow the same direction as your eyes. Okay, you don't have to put a lot on there. You don't have to put a lot of lines. Just make sure it's a little heavier towards the center than it is the outside. And just like that, I'm going to stop just like that. And do the same thing on the other side. Starting from the center, following the shape of the eyes. The difficult thing for me is not being able to turn my work as I'm painting. Because I need to stay up under the camera. Okay. So just a few on the outside and more on the inside. Just like that. And what that does is it starts making your eyes look a little bit more two-dimensional. It kind of gives them a roundness, like they're popping out a little bit. So for the beak, again, we're going to go into the yellow. Bring a little bit over here. And then add just a very little bit of brown. You can make it a little bit brighter than what the eyes were. But you don't want it super bright. Okay. And you want it, definitely wanted a thicker consistency for this, because we're going up over colors. You should be able to pick it up onto your paintbrush. Adding a little brown to that. Now, what I want you to do is I need to mix up more than that. I don't have enough, so I'm just going to mix it up over here. You want enough mixed up so you can pick up a little ball on the end of your paintbrush. So clean that brush off. This is a really easy way to make the beak, okay? So you should be able to pick up a little ball like that on the end of your brush. And then all you're going to do is set it down right here in the middle where that crest ends, right in the middle of the eyes. Put that little ball down and then very, very lightly drag it down and lift your brush as you go down. So what it's going to do, it's going to make a little peak. So set it down and then drag it down and lift your brush up slightly like that. And it'll make a taper down. And then I'm going to go in and make sure the black is filled in. Okay, and then once the beak is on, we're going to start adding some highlights to the crown. It's very dark right now, so we're going to add some highlights, and then we're going to go in and add some little swishes of black, but mixing kind of a thicker consistency, definitely a thicker consistency with the ocean. Nice clean brush. Pick up just a tiny little bit on the end of your fine brush. And all I want you to do is go in and just start adding very small, thin little highlights, following the same direction as your crown. Make sure you definitely get over into this darker area, because that's really going to make it pop out against that black. So just add little tiny thin swishes of that ocean. You don't want to cover all of the Scotland, but you definitely want a good amount of those highlights in there. Bring it all the way down between the eyes like that. I got a little brown into my white, so all I'm doing is going in with a damp brush and picking it back up off. Let's start adding the low lights and the details and stuff to the branch and the body. So for the branch, we just have, we're going to do two different colors. Let's go into that darker yellow that we made, and picking up just a little tiny bit. You want it kind of a medium consistency, but very small amount on your brush. Let's go in and start adding a few little swishes of yellow. They don't all start in the same place. There isn't a lot of them. We're just adding some texture and some definition to that branch. That's about all I'm going to give it. Maybe a little bit more on the top of the branch, because the light source is the moon, so you're going to have more light towards the top of your branch. So I'm going to do the lines a little bit heavier towards the top, like that. Maybe one little small one down here. And then when we have the yellow on, we're going to pick up some black, definitely more on the thicker side, but still paintable. Alright, nice clean brush. I want you to go in and add just very thin, same thing, thinner than the yellow. You don't have to add a lot, just a little bit here and there. Maybe more towards the bottom of your branches now, because we're getting away from the light source, because these are low lights. So just a little tiny bit here and there. They don't all have to be the same length. They don't start in the same spot. Just adding some texture. And then once you have those low lights in, we're going to go up and add very, very few to the crown. But definitely get some over here, because this is in the white area. So it would be more like kind of in between You don't want to add too many, but definitely put some in there. Okay, and then after you have a little bit in your crown, we're going to pick up the black. Make sure, again, working from the very, very tip of your brush, you have very little bit of black on that brush. I want you to go in and just make very, very fine little swipes of black. Just like we did the moon, just like we did the eyes. Barely touching, I mean barely touching down. So we're going to add more to this side of the wing. I'll show you. There's more on this side. It sort of helps give a separation here than there is on this side. Because again, the moonlight would be casting more light on the outside of the wing. Okay. So just a swiping feathering. Make sure you get some all the way down to the bottom. Make sure you get a little bit at the top, and always follow the shape. When you're doing shadowing, always follow the shape of the section that you're painting. And then when you get to the bottom, add a couple little wispies that come off the bottom, just to make it look like that wing is feathered or ruffled a little bit down there. Okay, and then let's add one more little color to this wing over here, and we're going to do very, very little. We're just going to pick up some of our ocean color, kind of thick, and I want you to add, you know, maybe just a tiny little bit in there. Just to add a little bit more dimension. That's about, I think, just like that, just a tiny bit. Just to break that wing up a little bit. Maybe add a little bit to the top like that. Okay. You want it kind of a thicker, but kind of smoother. What I'm doing is I'm taking my damp brush with no paint on it, and I'm just smoothing those over just a little bit with just a damp brush. So that's one way of blending it with just, if your paint looks a little bit thick on top, you can just go up over the top with a damp brush and blend it down a little bit. And then we're going to move over to this side, and we're going to start adding some dimension with the black. So going in with a smooth and very, very small, again, very small amount on your brush. We're going to start adding some, I don't really have any black right here, but we're going to start at the top. let me show you what I'm talking about. So between the eyes and the body, all this area is basically, it's all black. Missed a little spot there. But this is all black, and then we're going to take some of that black and we're going to start pulling it down onto the body. We don't really have any black low lights over here, but we're going to drag them down from the top. Okay, so I'm actually just going to fill this area in first around the beak, bring that beak down to a nice little sharp peak. Fill this area in kind of straight across, so bringing it straight across with the black. And then just take it and pull it down. And when you pull it, it's a very light feathering from that last couple of hairs on your paintbrush. And see how this one is longer, these ones are shorter, longer, shorter. Let that happen. It gives it more of a rounded effect on the top of your owl. And make sure again that you're following the same shape as the body, so you're making kind of rounded little motions. They're not straight down, they're kind of rounded and feathered down like that. And let some of them drag down a little bit further. This one's probably going to be the longest one over here, just like that. Alright, going in and mixing up some of that lilac. Sort of a thicker medium consistency. Cleaning the brush off. Now we're going to not only add a little bit down here towards the bottom, we're also going to pull some from the top, just like we did the black. Okay, so starting up here, this is why you want a thicker consistency, but still able to paint with as you're going up over these dark colors with a lighter color. And all you're going to do is just start pulling some down. I'm not adding too much over on this side, I'm adding more towards the belly. And as you get towards these areas, I want you to pull a little bit up from the bottom. Make some nice long lines up on for the lilac color. Okay. It's such a fun and relaxing process. So again, bringing some from the top down and more concentrating our lilac over here. You can add a couple little tiny little fine lines here, but we're mostly adding this color here. Okay. Alright, now we're going to add some white highlights. Just a little bit of white, and I'll show you where I've got that. So I've got some white, that's not the fondant showing through, so I've got a little bit of white right up here, and the reason why I'm putting it mostly up here is it makes it look like his little owl chest is poofing out a little further. We're also going to add a black line here, right there. Okay, so for now, we're going to concentrate on the white, and maybe just a little tiny bit in the wing, but mostly right up here in this area, and the same kind of feathering technique. So you definitely, for the white, you definitely want a thicker consistency. Okay, you definitely want to be able to pick that paint up with your brush. Okay, clean your brush off. Pick it up. And then just feather in a little bit of that white. Okay, we're first going to add it a little bit heavy, and then we're going to do some blending with our brush. So just a little bit up in this area. And then the same thing, just a few little swipes over here. See how opaque Sugarprism is? Just goes right up over those dark colors, no problem. Same with airbrushing. I think I told you that you can airbrush with Sugarprism. And then once you have that on there, I want you to just clean your brush off, get most of the water out, and then just come in and just blend it down a little bit with just your damp brush. Okay, just little swipes following the same direction as your wings. And you don't want your brush so watery that you're necessarily taking color off. You're just blending it down a little bit. I'm going to add just a little bit of highlight there at the bottom towards the edge, because that moonlight is pretty bright. So let's just add a tiny little bit of white at the bottom and leave it like that. Now, super important to have your white very thick for this, and a nice clean brush. You're just going to pick up a little ball. Now, the thing about the reflection in the eyes is, you can see, I think we're getting a reflection from my lamp light here, but the reflection on an animal's eyes, they're generally the same in both eyes. So where the reflection is in our owl's eyes is right out. Let me see if I can shield this so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So again, picking up just a little ball, I want you to very, very lightly add first up in this corner, one like that, and then one very, very, very small underneath it. And then in the same spot on this eye, over up in this corner, make one little dot, and then one very, very small underneath it like that. Okay, and then the very last thing that we're doing is just adding this black line to separate the body from the moon. Because we have these lines around the eyes, of course you want this to match. Oh, I almost forgot. We gotta add the stars into the background. So again, what you want to do is go into your white, and that needs to be very thick. Okay. And again, make sure after you're done mixing that up, your paintbrush is nice and clean. So you want a nice sharp tip on the end of it. And then going in with that white, we're just going to start adding our stars in the background. Now for stars, you don't really want a polka dot look, like very even little dots, and they don't all have to be the same size. Add little clusters here and there, make some bigger. Don't be afraid to get them right up next to the branches. But just start adding your stars, and don't forget these little bottom areas. Okay, again, we're not going for polka dots, we're doing little clusters here and there. Oops, do add a good amount. That one got a little out of hand, so we're going to go in and just pick that color up. Fill that back in with our black. And then finish adding our stars. Kind of a big one here and there. Don't be afraid to add some bigger stars when you look at them. They're all different sizes, different distances from us. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the class. I hope you practice it some more. Happy painting.